Hi students, I am going to discuss about the means of transport in the plants. If you like my channel, please press like button and subscribe it, share it with your friends. Okay, so how does the transport of substance takes place in human being? Obviously our answer will be with the help of the circulatory system. The blood is taking all the nutrients, all the substances to the cell utilizes and produce the energy for their life activities. Am I right? So in case of plants, the water and food also transported. But plants is not having the circulatory system as we are having. They have the special mode. Their two specialized tissue are playing a major role. One is in xylem and phloem. The xylem and phloems, they transport the substances in the plants. Okay, so the xylem is transporting minerals, water, ions. Okay, and the phloem is transporting the prepared food materials from the leaf. The leaf is the place where the food is prepared. After the preparation of the food in the leaves, the food is distributed to different parts of the plants through the process called the translocation. So with the help of the translocation, the food is distributed to different parts of the plants from the leaves. Am I right? Okay. So sometimes the transport of substance take place within a short distance or long distance. Okay, based on the transport of the substances and the distance, so it is classified into short distance and long distance. So the short distance cell to cell transport, short distance transport and long distance transport. So which are all playing in the cell to cell transporter? Number one, diffusion, osmosis and imbibitions. Okay, in case of long distance transport, ascents of cell sap, then osmotic pressures. Okay, transpiration pull. All these things playing a long distance transport in the plant. Okay, fine. So let's discuss about that. Based on their energy expenditure, the transport is classified into two categories. One is an passive transport, another one is an active transport. So passive transport, what are all comes under the passive transport? Diffusion process, imbibition process, osmosis process. Okay. So in case of active transport, so sodium and potassium pump. Okay. So in case of passive transport, the energy is not utilized. Okay, in case of active transport, the energy is used to do the activities. So what is that? Which are all comes under passive transport? Diffusion. Let's discuss about the diffusion. Okay, what is diffusion? So diffusion is nothing but the movement of the substances from the higher concentration to lower concentration. Look at this diagram. Diffusion part. Region A and region B. So here the number of solid molecules are more, and in B the number of solid molecules is less. So the concentration is higher in the A region and concentration is lower in the B regions. What happens? The solute started to diffuse. The solute started to diffuse from the higher concentration to lower concentration. Okay. Until where it will move on? So until it reaches the equilibrium. So what is needed for this diffusion process? Concentration gradient. Concentration gradient always maintained in the cell. Okay, only concentration gradients. Is there any other factors are involved? Yes, of course. So factors, you will find it temperature, then you will find it at pressure. So the concentration gradient, temperature and pressures affect the diffusion process. Okay. Then certain cases what happens, these lipid molecules are able to penetrate easily into the cell membrane, but that polar molecules, okay, polar substances are not able to penetrate easily into the cell membrane. Okay, the smaller substances are able to move across the cell membrane, but these larger substances are not able to move across the cell membrane. In that case, what happens? How it can be facilitated? So that the larger substances are transported through the facilitated substances called facilitated proteins. Okay, so the facilitated proteins may be that aquaporin or porin. Channel, these porin and aquaporins comes under the channel protein and carrier protein. So facilitated proteins are helping the larger molecules to transport easily into the cell membrane. Not only the larger molecules and also its solubility. So based on that, the facilitated diffusions is determined based on the size of the molecule. Size of molecule. Number 2 is solubility. Solubility of the molecule. So based on these factors, the facilitated diffusion is determined. Okay, let's move on. Facilitated diffusions. So look at this diagram. So these diagrams, we are able to identify one channel is open, another place the channel is closed. This is membrane outside of the cell and inside of the cell. Okay, so this channel protein is nothing but an porin or aquaporin. The channel protein is nothing but porin or aquaporin. Okay, aquaporin allow the large amount of water substances into the cell membrane. Okay, so this channel protein, they make a tunnel-like structure. Through the tunnel-like structure, the larger, the polar substances, the water substances, able to penetrate into the cell membrane. Okay, so and porin is a large transported proteins and which it infuses with the cell membrane surfaces and make a tunnel structure. Through that, it allows large amount of that protein molecules or the large sized molecule into the cell membrane. Okay, so in case, so here whenever it is not required, these channel proteins will be closed. Whenever the cell membrane, the cell require certain special specific molecules, then it opens up. Okay, so next things that carrier protein. Before going into the carrier proteins, where do we identify the porin and aquaporin? Porin is present on the cell membrane of the bacteria, fungi, okay, and plastid, mitochondria. In all these things, plastid, bacteria, mitochondria. So we are able to identify porin in the membrane of the plastids, mitochondria, bacteria, fungi. Okay. So aquaporins, more than 30 types of aquaporins are identified from the maize plant alone. Okay, along with this aquaporin, and there are certain substrate like an ammonium, there are ROS, reactive oxygen species, as well as you will identify metabolites. Okay, all these things are transported through this channel proteins in the facilitated diffusions. So carrier protein, in case of carrier protein, just these carrier proteins are embedded, they act as a vehicle. The carrier protein act as a vehicles. They bind with the larger molecules of polar substance. After binding, okay, they dissociate, they change their, modify their shapes. They modify their shapes until these larger substances reach inside of the cell membranes. Okay, so this carrier protein do lot of modifications until this large substance dissociate into the cell membrane. Okay, it acts as a carrier protein. Once this carrier protein receive the larger substances or protein molecules, they rotate. So like this it will be there. Once these substances comes, okay, then they rotate. So they rotate. This is the front side if you think, this is the back side. So what happens once that the molecules come and attach in the front side of the carrier proteins, then this carrier protein rotate. So it push this larger molecule into the cell membranes. Okay, got it? So that is the function of the carrier protein. So based on the directions of the transport of substances by carrier protein, the carrier protein are classified into 3 categories. The number 1 is an uniport, number 2 is a symport, number 3 is an antiport. This is membrane. Okay, consider this is a membrane and this is a carrier protein. And just think it. So this is Uniport. Only a single type of substances are able to move across the membranes in a specified direction. That's we call it in a Uniport. In Uniport, what happens? Only a single type of substances move across the cell membrane into the cell. From outside of the cell to inside of the cell, across the membrane. Okay, it is independent of other substances. So it is known as a uniport. Okay, another one is called symport. So in symport, two types of molecules move across the membrane from outside of the cell to inside of the cells in one direction. These two types of molecules from the outside of the cell move across the membrane to inside of the cell in one direction. This is we call it a symport or co-transport. This is we call it in symport or co-transport. Okay. The third one we call it an antiport. So in case of antiport, two types of molecules move across the membranes in opposite direction. So two types of molecules move across the membrane in opposite direction. Do you understand what I am saying? In case of symport, two types of molecules move across the membrane from outside of the cell to inside of the cell. Okay, so in one direction. But here opposite direction. Two types of molecules move across the membrane in opposite direction. So thereby we can identify the similarity between the co-transport and antiport. The similarity between the co-transport and antiport. Okay, so two types of molecules are moving across the membrane. But differences in co-transport, it moves in one direction, and in anti-transport, that two types of molecules moves in opposite directions. Do you understand what I am saying? Okay, fine. So now, what is the significance of diffusion? The significance of diffusion, importance of diffusion. significance of diffusion, what will be? Gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange. In case of diffusion, it is independent of living organism. Okay, so what happens that diffusion is very slow process. Diffusion is very slow process, does not require any energy to be activated. So gaseous exchanges, okay, through the stomata, through okay. Another thing is we call it in transpirations, gaseous transpirations. So in case of gaseous exchange, the carbon dioxide enter into the stomata and oxygen is exit outside of the stomata of the leaf. Okay, transpiration. What is transpiration? Loss of water through the stomata, loss of excess water. Okay, loss of excess water through stomata. Is known as transpiration. Okay, clear? The main significance of the diffusion is a transpiration process and gaseous exchange. Okay, so have you entered in the surgical theater? Have you entered inside the surgical theater? How this surgical theater is sterilized? Okay, you know what is the sterilization? Okay, free from the pathogens. Have you entered the surgical theaters? How they are sterilizing these surgical theaters? They form fumes, which with the help of what? They form fumes. Okay, so formalin. They use formalin plus KMnO4. What is this? KMnO4? Potassium permanganate. Potassium permanganate. Okay, so they make a fume by using formalin and KMnO4. This fume will kill the pathogens and sterilize the surgical theater. So this process is called fumigation. This is, we call it a fumigation. What is fumigation? So by making the fumes with the help of the formalins and potassium permanganate and to kill the pathogen, or killing the pathogens and free from the infections. So that's, we call it in fumigations. Okay, so I hope so you understood the means of transport in the plants. So what is next, we will discuss about the active transport. In case of active transport, the movement of the substances from the lower concentration to higher concentration with the expenditure of energy. So example, sodium potassium pump. Okay, so we will be discussing active transport later. Okay, I hope so you understood the means of transport in the plant. Thank you.